I get the impression working with monkeys is quite exactly the same as working with retards like Downies. Like, near identical behaviors.
Have you worked with Downies or monkeys?
I would rather work with monkeys. The mentally retarded behave randomly because their brains are defective. Monkeys might not be as intelligent, but they still follow a set of predictable instincts.
Professional Wrangler here. That only applies to brain damage. If one under your supervision has done something randomly, that is because you are shit at your job and have not bothered to pay attention to how the chuckle fucks think. Surprisingly quite similar to how toddlers think half the time. As for monkeys, they are literally a completely different species. If one thing is going to act random, it is them. Because we don't entirely understand their thought processes beyond certain instinctual behaviors along with natural barriers with communication.
How much are you paid to wrangle tarts? What's your funniest experience with them?
About $70K annually, but I do night shifts. Now when you work with a lot of tards, they all start to sound like SCPs because of how specific their care plan and needs are. Reading their care overview or monthly reports on behavior just needs a few redacteds and you got an entry for the website. They even have a threat level with how large the ratio to 1 is, as 1 to 1 means they are safe enough for one person to take care of them. But you can also get 2 to 1, 3 to 1 and even 4 to 1. SCP containment requirements being present are just as uncanny when most potatoes have a safe space for when they have a tantrum or emotional episode. Some containment/safe spaces are just a bedroom, maybe a garden. Others are a padded 4-post tent contained within a bedroom with sloped windows, no physical hard objects at a given time. Sound and video recording from within containment which must be monitored by at least one personnel at any given time to make sure containment is secure and intact while the tard is contained. Then there is the anomalous behavior they possess. All electronic devices with a UI interface must not be present within the vicinity of Billy 2175. If such a device is detected by Billy 2175, it will not stop in its pursuit until the device is in its possession. Previous attempts at preventing Billy 2175 from gaining access to visible devices have resulted in serious injuries to attached personnel. If Billy 2175 is successful in its acquisition, it will attempt to find application YouTube. If no app is accessible, Billy 2175 will become emotionally distressed and will become violent. Personnel are authorized to use antipsychotics and to send Billy 2175 to containment chamber. If the application YouTube is accessible, Billy 2175 will proceed to watch the entire video repository of the annoying orange and will attempt to find and use a culinary tool to mimic the dismemberment of the fruits featured in such videos. Real person I worked with, by the way.
For real? Lamau.
Yeah. He would try to go into kitchen drawers and take knives out and go postal on fruit and food while yelling knife. Or hey purr. He also used to watch and mimic re-uploads of Honey Puff commercials and would square up his shoulders and growl like the Honey Monster before going apeshit on anything resting on a table or shelf, as the Honey Monster would destroy rooms in the commercial. This is all the while he is growling word honey in as low of a voice as possible. He was something else.
That's quite incredible and law-worthy. I'm assuming Down syndrome? Is there a certain type that you find easier to work with than others? What about it do you enjoy that keeps you doing it? I can't say it's something I would ever dream of putting up with. I definitely don't have the patience for it.
Sorry for the delay, just finished a set of night shifts and relaxing before the next set arrives. Billy didn't have Down syndrome, but he was blessed with a special concoction of things. He had profound autism, learning disability, bipolar, epilepsy. Now, if anyone has any previous experience with any of the things on that list, they would know immediately that almost every single one of them pertains to emotional instability. Autism is obvious, but Billy's learning disability was such that he had the body of a 20-year-old linebacker but with the mind of a 2-year-old, with autism. So infant-like tantrums were common but with autist rage. But this is further multiplied by the bipolar personality disorder. So now you have 20-year-old autistic infant who has aggressive mood swings. Finally there is the epilepsy, which exacerbates shit even further by having high amounts of frontal lobe activity, i.e., he can develop mania or fucking chronic tonics out of nowhere if he is not raging about a drop of water falling onto his clothes. He had the exact perfect combination of total, unadulterated berserker genes and unholy matrimony, with a body seemingly perfectly designed to be capable of overpowering two men. Suffice to say, He had 6 different medications prescribed to keep him stable, and his mother always said that God gave him the disability because if he was fully cognitively developed, he would probably killed someone by now. But with that being all said, he was charming, but he was really hard work and was infamous amongst social services in the entire county for how challenging his behavior was. Now, on to Down syndrome. I have not worked with too many Downies, but the few that I have worked with were all very different in how challenging they were. You see, Downies fall under 3 different tiers. Mosaic, hardcore autistic, learning disability. Mosaics are glorified skinwalker Downies. They have the physical disability but not the cognitive stuff that comes with it, so they are normies trapped in a corrupted chromosomal shell that they cannot escape. Hardcore autistic Downies are the ones you usually see on television, and they're usually pretty chill. But they are also often quite vulnerable as they are extremely trusting and are, ironically, face blind. Downies may look all the same to us, but we look all the same to them too. But another thing about autist Downies which is seldom mentioned in the mainstream is, well, they are naturally born sexual predators. To clarify, Downies are cursed with hyperlibido. They have insane sex drives and it causes a fuck ton, pardon the pun, of sexual frustration. But thankfully God is intelligent with his grand designs, and as a result Downies are usually found in other places with other Downies, and it just so happens Downies are sterile. So as a result Downies will fuck other Downies until the cows come home and will often shack up with each other. Crisis averted. But when the question becomes this: what happens when a Downie isn't socially developed enough to be with other autistic Down syndromes? What if they have a learning disability? Well, this leads to the next tier of Down syndrome and where we move towards our next SCP-style entry. Tard number, Carmen 1163. Autism class, 2-1. Special safe space procedures. Carmen 1163 is kept within its bedroom at all times when not under the direct supervision of care personnel. Bedroom window must be inspected every 168 hours to ensure that the metal containment bars are secure and not compromised by failed escape efforts attempted by Carmen 1163. 2 Assigned personnel must remain present at the residence while Carmen 1163 is within containment to ensure its safety and the safety of the general population in case of containment breach caused by Carmen 1163. When Carmen 1163 is permitted to roam outside of bedroom containment chamber as per care plan protocol, personnel must ensure that they escort Carmen 1163 at all times to maintain quality of care. Female care personnel being assigned to Carmen 1163 or any female visitation is strictly prohibited. If the presence of a female is authorized, they must remain at a minimum of 2 meters away from Carmen 1163, with existing personnel remaining within close contact of Carmen 1163 to ensure the safety of the female personnel. Light levels must remain visible within the residence to ensure Carmen 1163 does not attempt to evade supervision or containment of care personnel. Description: Carmen 1163 is a 33-year-old male with chronic Down syndrome and learning disability. Its height is approximately 5 feet or 1.5 meters in length while weighing 250 pounds or 113.3 kilograms. Carmen 1163 possesses considerable amounts of black body hair accompanied by a partially formed beard, alongside distinctive grade 7 balding as per the Norwood scale. Carmen 1163 is usually equipped with elasticated trousers typical of athletes, but is often barefoot and devoid of any top wear, with exception of a cotton fleece bedroom robe often worn at all times of the day. Carmen 1163 is also identifiable by its body odor, which has failed to dissipate, despite all attempts made by care personnel. Cause yet to be identified. Carmen 1163 is capable of strength in disproportion to its size. Carmen 1163 has also exceptional dexterity despite apparent health difficulties when attempting evade to capture or to capture females spotted within its vicinity. Carmen 1163's capacity of communication is limited, as expected for a tard of its diagnosis, with a personal lexicon of English words associated with objects, places, individuals and desired actions. Personnel must immediately report any new or unidentifiable phrases to senior care personnel and consultants for documentation. Carmen 1163 prior to containment has been documented to have committed 4 separate incidents of sex offenses in violation with, redacted, state law. Previous predatory nature persists with Carmen 1163, and it will attempt to assault any unprotected humanoid with a feminine appearance, extent of preference being strictly biological or superficial yet to be determined. If a female is sighted by Carmen 1163, it will audibly signal its alerted state with humpy. If Carmen 1163 has signaled humpy while no apparent females are presented, is to be assumed that Carmen 1163 has spotted one or multiple individuals beyond its containment or residence. Scheduled walks must be skipped for 48 hours to allow Carmen 1163 to revert back to previous unaroused state. The 1992 Spider-Man movie The Green Goblin's Last Stand may be played alongside a ceiling-mounted disco ball to expedite the process and to distract Carmen 1163 if the threat it possesses is imminent. SCP jokes aside, Downies with learning disabilities do have a higher chance to commit sex offenses compared to normies, unfortunately. How it is also worth mentioning that the extent of sex offenses usually fall into groping or indecent exposure. I was assigned to Carmen for only a brief time and, aside from his history and potential risk to women, was pretty standard fare with regards to any lovable tard with a learning disability. They don't have the full cognitive capacity to understand the weight of their actions or behavior on other people.
Tards and other genetic unfortunates usually have a host of other defects as well. Any slight defect in your genome can cause metabolic disorders, which means intermediate molecules aren't broken down into their simpler forms. Sometimes these molecules give off that characteristic smell. A good example is phenylketonuria.
What is even the point of keeping things like this alive? So much money spent, and for what? Somebody like this will never get better. Their life will never improve. They will never stop being a danger to everyone around them. Just put them down. It's better for everyone that way.
It's all part of God's infinite plan.
Keeps me in a job, I suppose. I guess morally it falls down to something akin to when you start to decide what defects to cut off from society. Where does the line stop? If it is down to care costs, it seems clear-cut. But there are other costs which come from people who do not have care requirements but are unable to hold jobs or become contributors to society as a whole. A NEET provides nothing but is at worst a spurg, and not all spurgs are cost sinks in society. Even Downies can contribute via menial labor and not rely heavily on care. So does the question fall onto productivity more than genetics? After all, hobos do jack shit and ruin the scenery, so why don't we just line them up a wall? When you start to explore eugenics from a utilitarian cost/burden angle, you begin to go down other avenues beyond a simple have their genes been smashed and slammed by God. I have heard that in passing with other people I worked with regarding genetic causes for some odor, which is quite interesting. I have known people who have had to use hardcore antiperspirant cream for odor because sprays do jack shit, and always wondered why they struggled more than myself, who just needs a spray can and some soap in the shower.
Can you give an example pertaining to, say, managing sub-80 IQ individuals?
Not really my wheelhouse, as I usually work with people who are considered to have challenging disabilities. But low IQ, from what I am aware, are pretty good at appearing normal until you get to know how they look after themselves or topics beyond town gossip. They struggle with executive functions essentially.
He would have killed someone by now. I hear this a lot about the disabled, quite often said by Christians. Is this a common view, or does it depend solely on the good boy wouldn't hurt a fly factor of the affliction?
From my experience, it's not entirely a religious trope. In Billy's case, I actually do genuinely believe that if he had full cognitive capacity, he would have killed someone. Some people are so naturally violent that the only thing holding them back is a mental disability. If you want to get autistic about it, think of it as a mental handicap. Remove that handicap and their potential for neuroticism and instability will be unmatched. A 2-year-old may get angry because a TV show no longer airs his favorite educational show. But a 30-year-old can get angry with modernity or aspects of society or life way out of his control. One can be solved by showing reruns, the other you can't do anything. A 2-year-old will scream, grab and throw. A 30-year-old may grab piano wire and strangle a man in a street or get hold of a gun. When you start to understand it from that perspective, it is not an outrageous claim to make. So, to fully answer your question, it's a common view. Working with tards with challenging learning disabilities is different from non-challenging after all. These are families that have been assaulted and often injured by their own loved ones or even terrified by their presence. As much as I joke about my work, it's a serious shit. It's not like looking after an old person or an Asperger's obsessed over anthropomorphic animals. These are vulnerable, but equally dangerous, people.
How long do you plan on doing this SCP Anon? Do you ever feel like you could go insane yourself with too much exposure?
until I work my way into becoming the Class A sending in the Class D personnel. I am fortunate enough to be recognized by my agency, and I don't mean that as a SCP reference, to know my shit and to not be a slacker. In a few years I can become a team manager, which will bump my wage further and put me in logistical work and wrangling the carers to their job as opposed to me wrangling the tards. As for me going crazy, that brings me to another scary similarity between tard wrangling and SCP. After a while, the insanity you surround yourself just starts to feel normal. I am still pretty young. By my mid-30s I might be able to buy some cheap properties and subsist on rent change and quit. But for now I am putting my nose to the grindstone and trying to keep a straight face as a young man in front of me is mesmerized by a knockoff animatronic cactus dancing to Rio Grande.